Imagine waking up, moving from a soft bed to a cushioned car seat, sitting at a desk for 8 hours, migrating to a sofa to scroll through a screen, and finally returning to bed. This is the standard architecture of a modern Tuesday, but beneath the surface of that quiet routine, your biology is essentially suffocating. It is waiting for a signal that never comes. And the result of that silence, we see it everywhere. Brain fog, metabolic crashes, a creeping sense of anxiety, and clinical depression. What if the cure for this modern malaise isn't necessarily found in a pill bottle, but in the simple mechanical act of contracting your muscles? What if exercise is not just a way to burn calories, but is actually molecular medicine?
It is a profound shift in how we have to view the human body. We have spent millions of years evolving through constant, unavoidable movement. Walking, lifting, climbing, running, these were never optional hobbies. They were pure survival. The human body was built with the expectation of physical friction. But what modern science is uncovering right now is absolutely extraordinary. Movement isn't just about building physical strength or looking a certain way. It is a fundamental biochemical language. When you move, you are literally changing the chemical environment of your entire body.
A biochemical language. I love that framing. Because most of us look at muscles purely as mechanical pulleys, right? We think they exist solely to lift heavy objects, move us from point A to point B, or, let's be honest, to look good in a t-shirt. We view them as structural, but you are saying they are doing something much more invisible, much more communicative.
Exactly. We need to completely discard the idea that muscle is just meat on bones. Biologically speaking, skeletal muscle is deeply communicative. It actually functions as an endocrine organ. When you contract a muscle, it doesn't just pull on a tendon, it secretes highly specialized signaling proteins directly into your bloodstream. We call these molecules myokines.
Myokines. So it is almost like the muscle is sending out a mass text message to the rest of the body every time it flexes.
That is a perfect analogy. And the recipients of those molecular messages are your immune system, your metabolism, and incredibly, your brain. The body interprets every single bicep curl, every squat, or even a brisk walk as biochemical information. It is like turning the key in an ignition that powers up your own internal pharmacy. These myokines influence immune regulation, they balance energy, and they dictate how your body manages inflammation.
That completely redefines the concept of a runner's high or the mood boost we get from the gym. We always hear about endorphins or dopamine and serotonin. But if these myokines are entering the bloodstream and acting as messengers, are they actually altering our emotional state? Could movement literally be functioning as a natural antidepressant?
The clinical data points heavily in that exact direction. Exercise consistently demonstrates powerful, measurable effects on depression, anxiety, stress resilience, and emotional regulation. While those classic neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin absolutely matter, myokines represent a massive, previously hidden mechanism. Some of these proteins are actually capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier. Once inside the brain, they influence neuroinflammation, they trigger neuroplasticity, and they alter how the brain processes stress signals. You aren't just sweating out a bad mood, you are fundamentally changing the physical chemistry of your brain. Movement literally creates antidepressant chemistry inside the body.
That is staggering to think about. It implies that being sedentary isn't just a physical issue of getting out of shape. It is a form of severe biochemical deprivation. By sitting all day, we are actively starving our brains of the very molecules they need to stay emotionally stable.
That is exactly what is happening. We are operating a piece of ancient, high-performance machinery in an environment it was never designed for. The brain expects the chemistry of movement continuously. When you deprive it of those myokine signals, the system starts to glitch.
Let's dig into that machinery a bit more. Are there specific molecules we should be paying attention to? Because if I am building a living pharmacy every time I walk up the stairs or lift a weight, I want to know exactly what kind of medicine I am manufacturing.
You are manufacturing some incredibly potent ones. Two of the absolute superstars in this scientific field right now are BDNF and Irisin. BDNF stands for Brain-Derived Neurotrophic Factor. You can think of it as high-grade fertilizer for your brain. It supports neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to rewire itself. It helps you learn, it retains memory, and it literally ensures the survival of your neurons. And exercise is one of the most reliable, powerful ways to spike BDNF activity.
So, working out literally helps the brain grow and adapt. It's not just a poetic metaphor about getting mentally stronger. It is literal, physical growth of neural networks.
It is literal, measurable growth. The brain responds to muscular activity profoundly. And then you have molecules like Irisin, which is a myokine that essentially bridges the gap between muscle activity, metabolic health, and neurological adaptation. When your muscles contract, irisin is released into circulation, and it helps regulate how your body handles energy and adapts to stress. Which naturally brings us to the metabolic side of this conversation, which is equally as powerful as the neurological side. Skeletal muscle is actually one of the largest glucose disposal systems in the human body.
Meaning it acts like a giant sponge for all the sugar and carbohydrates we consume?
Precisely. When muscles contract, they become highly efficient at soaking up glucose from the blood, drastically improving your insulin sensitivity. This helps regulate your blood sugar stability, optimizes your energy production, and builds metabolic flexibility. Furthermore, myokines support deep anti-inflammatory effects. When you are sedentary, your body tends to accumulate chronic, low-grade inflammation. Movement itself is the mechanism that clears that inflammatory stress out of the system.
It really makes you look at modern gym culture with a critical eye. We have completely commodified exercise into an aesthetic pursuit. It is all about weight loss, getting a six-pack, or looking a certain way for social media. But listening to you, it sounds like we are entirely missing the point. Exercise isn't a punishment for what you ate, and it isn't just a cosmetic tool, it is basic biological maintenance.
That is the great tragedy of how modern culture frames fitness. We have built an entire industry around vanity, which alienates so many people. But fundamentally, movement is biological regulation. Exercise affects the health of your mitochondria, your circulation, your sleep architecture, your brain chemistry, your stress response, your bone density, and your immune signaling. When you lift a weight or go for a run, the primary goal shouldn't be the mirror, it should be physiological resilience.
So movement might actually be one of the most powerful longevity technologies that humans possess. We spend billions of dollars looking for anti-aging pills or biohacking shortcuts, but the most sophisticated technology is already built into our muscle fibers.
Very likely. And the societal cost of ignoring this technology is devastating. Modern civilization increasingly promotes stillness, sitting at desks, scrolling on phones, passive consumption of media. This inactivity directly contributes to the skyrocketing rates of metabolic dysfunction, poor insulin sensitivity, muscle loss, and the emotional instability we see today. The body evolved under constant low-level movement. Our modern sedentary environments create a massive biological mismatch.
It is a haunting image, really. The idea that the silence of our muscles is exactly what is making us sick. But let's look forward. If we now understand that muscle contraction is a form of biochemical dosing, how does this change the future of medicine? Are we going to see a day where doctors prescribe 3 sets of heavy squats and a 2-mile run instead of reaching straight for a pharmaceutical pad?
I believe we are standing on the edge of exactly that reality. It is a very exciting area of research. Perhaps the future of healthcare will increasingly prescribe movement with the exact same precision we currently use for pharmaceuticals. Future medicine may integrate data from your wearables, looking at your heart rate variability, your specific movement data, your muscle mass, your continuous glucose response, and your recovery patterns. AI will then analyze that data to personalize a movement prescription biologically. Because movement is not a generic, one-size-fits-all thing. It is literal biochemical dosing.
So the gym essentially becomes a personalized neurological and metabolic laboratory. We move away from guessing and we move toward absolute precision. If your neuroinflammation is high, you get a specific dose of cardiovascular work. If your insulin sensitivity is dropping, you get a specific dose of resistance training.
Yes, in many ways, that is exactly where we are heading. The body is not compartmentalized. The muscles, the brain, the immune system, and the metabolism are communicating continuously. We are finally getting the tools to interpret that communication and prescribe the right physical inputs to heal the system.
It completely shifts the paradigm of what it means to be human in motion. Every single movement changes your chemistry. Every step you take sends signals through your bloodstream. Every muscle contraction communicates directly with the brain, telling it to adapt, to grow, to stabilize.
And perhaps the most beautiful realization here is that the human body was never designed merely to survive movement. It was designed to depend on it. We depend on physical friction for our emotional, metabolic, and neurological stability itself. Because as we now know, muscles are not silent tissue, they are living pharmacies.
A living pharmacy waiting for us to write the prescription. It makes you want to stand up right now, doesn't it? What signals are you sending your body today? Are you letting the internal conversation go silent, or are you keeping the dialogue alive? We have to remember that we aren't just moving to change how we look, we are moving to change how we exist. Something to think deeply about the next time you consider skipping that walk or taking the elevator instead of the stairs. Keep moving, keep communicating with your biology, and unlock the medicine you already carry inside you.